Hello everyone, welcome to another card combo show with me, Chocobilly, and this week I'm looking at a card that, upon first impression, seems relatively unimpressive, but actually has some really cool combos, and no, it isn't a ninja. Also, make sure to like and subscribe as it really does make a big difference to the channel. So, the card I am looking at this week is Ignis from Opus 20. So he's a 5 CP 9k Earth Forward, with the text, when Ignis enters the field, you may put one backup you control into the break zone. When you do so, choose one forward, break it. When a backup you control is put from field into the break zone, choose one forward in your break zone, add it to your hand. This effect will only trigger during your turn, and only once per turn. So first up, what's notable about this is the fact that this isn't a case like you normally get with a lot of forwards entry abilities, where you can put the forward into the break zone and then your opponent can Amaterasu or cancel that effect. It's all one effect. They either Amaterasu before you put it in the break zone, or they don't at all. Because it's, when Ignis enters the field, you may put one backup you control into the break zone, so it's at resolution. So if it were, when Ignis enters the field, put one backup into the break zone, if you do so, blah. Because the if you do so part then becomes a delayed auto ability triggered from the putting the backup into the break zone. But this is just, when he enters the field, you may, if you do, or yeah. So, yeah, that's obviously really good. And also, yeah, just bear in mind the fact that he can only get forwards back to your hand on your turn. Doesn't trigger on your opponent's turn. So, there are a lot of fun things you can do with this card. First up, Rampair. Fairly obvious one here, but yeah, just being able to break Rampair to play a forward straight through Rampair is really good. But what's fantastic about this little combo is the fact that, let's say you've got 9 CP Shantoto in the break zone, which is the card that this that Rampair got normally paired together with. You can, let's say, dull 3 backups including Rampair and discard Shantoto to pay for Ignis' effect. You then put Rampair into the break zone for Ignis' own effect. That then triggers both Rampair and Ignis' effect. What you can do is stack it so that it goes Rampair and then Ignis. Ignis will resolve first, getting you Shantoto back to your hand, and then playing Shantoto onto the field. So, Ignis is now able to recur part of his cost and then play immediately onto the field, and that is so incredibly strong. And with a card like Rampair, it just works beautifully, because there's no cost restriction on what Rampair can play, just has to be an 11 forward, and there's lots of really good 11 forwards, and yeah, just being able to play anything back onto the field, as well as, I mean, the fun thing with Shantoto is as well, you play Ignis, break Rampair, to then play Shantoto from your break zone, to then bring Rampair back onto the field. So if you break Rampair again, you can play something else. Because, you know, if you're running that sort of deck, and best guess what my next deck tech video is going to be about. Yeah, obviously Ignis is going to be everywhere. Right. Star Sybil, similar sort of thing, but again, you can break Star Sybil to play a forward from your hand, but you break Star Sybil, that then triggers Ignis' effect, you get the forward from your break zone to hand, and then immediately play onto the field. Slightly different to Rampair, because obviously Rampair has the restriction on it being an 11 forward. This time it just has to be a forward of 6 or less, but that's still really playable. Like, even a 4 CP forward, that's well worth it. To be able to get it straight from your break zone and play onto the field is nice, because it's just like the old school Devout at that point. But yeah, just a 6 CP forward in your break zone, break Star Sybil with Ignis on the field, play straight on the field. Very nice. Tama, so this is kind of a funny one as well. So you can pay X, break Tama, and then just play a character onto the field of cost X or less. Obviously when you break Tama, you get it forward from your break zone, add it to your hand. Now normally Tama is utilized in ways to basically kind of give forwards back attack, but not. You can play things onto your opponent or onto your field during your opponent's turn, which is nice, but because Ignis doesn't trigger during your opponent's turn, you can't really utilize it in that way. But either way, you can still, say, in the middle of your combat phase or something like that, break Tama to get something out of your break zone, then play it onto the field, maybe buff a forward or break something that was blocking. You know, there's loads of different things you can utilize it for in the middle of an interaction, which is really cool. And yet again, just like with all the other forwards, you break Tama to pay the cost, and then you play the forward. And what's also fun as well is that you can use a bit of misdirection here as well. So for example, you could pay 6 with Tama and then get back something like, I don't know, Sid Reigns or what's her name, Aranea, and then play Rebel Akbel from your hand and then break forward, because obviously Sid Reigns and Aranea have a restriction on their breakages, whereas Rebel, you just need to have Crystal. So, you know, you can use a bit of misdirection with that as well, which is quite fun. Antlion. So when a backup enters your field or a backup you control leaves your field, till the end of the turn he becomes a forward with 9k power, and when he attacks, I don't care about that effect because it doesn't really matter, but ultimately, you're running something like Ignis, you're going to constantly keep on breaking and recurring your backups, playing them back onto the field. You're going to keep on making space for more backups, so that line kind of makes sense. It's not an amazing forward, to be honest, because it's not one of those sorts of effects that you're going to be able to do every turn. Just, you know, break something, play it back onto the field, or just break it something and then at the following turn put it back on the field. You know, ultimately, it requires a relatively costly investment. Now, if you're playing something like Wind, it actually kind of makes sense because, unfortunately, Aranea doesn't exist anymore. I say unfortunately, it's very fortunate it doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, it's not the easiest card to trigger, but still kind of fun if it does. Garland. Yep, obviously, you break Ignis, you get you break Ignis, you play Ignis, you break a backup, you then get a forward from your break zone. You also get to draw a card from Garland as well. Pretty simple. Virion, again, simple. Just put one backup you control into the break zone. Till the end of the turn, Virion gains First Strike and Brave. But you can use that to be able to recur some important cards. So, you know, you can utilize that alongside some other backups that might have good break abilities. You might want to get rid of them, maybe break your Shantoto to then replay Shantoto as well. So, you know, you can kind of double dip for what you're looking for, basically. Maria, keeping with the 2 theme, I didn't realize I did that. But yeah, obviously Maria has the kind of cool effect of being able to make your backups into forwards, and that ultimately means that they can block, they can attack, whatever. They lose their abilities, but they are both backups and forwards at the same time. So then maybe you incorporate it with maybe some water, you play Bamfrit, and you sack off your forward, they sack off one of their forwards, but your forward is actually a backup as well, which means you get to get a forward back to your hand. So yeah, you can utilize that in really cool ways to be able to just break your backups, which are also forwards, so you can start attacking with them, and your opponent knows that if that forward dies, you still get a forward back to your hand as well. So, a bit of fun. Robel Akbel, yeah, so it's fairly obvious. If you're going to be breaking your backups, you want to actually be able to recur them. Now, you got Kuchaspal, but, you know, you really need to rely on actually casting that here is an EX. Whereas Robel is just a constant influx of getting your backups back to hand. Now, Robel never sticks around for very long, but in the right deck, you know, it should be there for at least 1 or 2 turns. Get some backups back to your hand, playing back onto the field. Again, works nicely with that line. Duke Snakeheart. So yeah, I mean, it could be a case of you play Ignis onto the field, you break it back up, and you get yourself a nice little back attack. And then, bam, play him onto your opponent's field when they've attacked, and kill the forward. Noctis. So, obviously Noctis can play Ignis if you wanted to onto the field, but then you would break Noctis to then play Ignis and then break another backup. So even if you're at 5 backups, that immediately puts you down to 3, which isn't amazing. So being able to play use Noctis, sorry, whilst you've got Iggy on the field. Yes, I just call him Iggy. It is Noctis is there. I have to call him Iggy. So yeah, you get something to play that onto the field, but you also then get a card to hand as well, which works nicely with things. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Which works nicely with cards with S abilities. Now, unfortunately, there aren't really many good 15 characters or 15 forwards that he can play with that decent of S abilities in Earth and something else. I mean, there's what? Gladiolus, I guess. That's a bit costly, but there are better ways to do that. I'll show you later. Also, there's Noctis as well. So yeah, obviously, when a category 15 character and other than Noctis enters the field, you can choose one 40 opponent controls, dull it. So Ignis gets to move 2 things out of the way. And then when a category 15 character other than Noctis, you control from the field to the break zone, choose one 40 opponent controls, dull it. So you could play Ignis onto the field, and I don't know, put Prompto into the break zone. That's something entering, something leaving, and Ignis breaking something. You get to move 3 things out of the way. If you're in Lightning, good chances you can give something haste as well. Noct has already been there, so good chance you could probably attack with him anyway. So yeah, just very, very easy to be able to move lots of things out of the way quickly. Ziggy. So yeah, as I was saying earlier, great way to be able to find S abilities. So there's another card after this which is very, very similar, but also a bit more flexible. So I mean, the obvious play here is Yuffie, right? You break Ziggy to go find yourself a Yuffie. You've also broken a backup, so you then use Ignis to go get Yuffie from your break zone. So you immediately now have 2 Yuffie in hand. You play one onto the field, you attack with it, S ability, you just kill stuff. Leafkin is the other one I was talking about. So, I mean, it's a bit weird. It's kind of more versatile, also kind of isn't. It's more expensive, has a restriction of damage 3, but it also immediately plays onto the field. So, you know, I don't see how there would be some sort of problem there, but ultimately you could break Ziggy and then, I don't know, not have the right CP or something like that. Whereas Leafkin will play it immediately onto the field. 2 wind, 1, and a break. So you do have to bear in mind that that's probably a lot of your CP used up already before even getting Yuffie onto the field, but then you get Yuffie back to your hand with Ignis, so you want to make sure you've got the cards or the CP ready to be able to use her S ability as well. But there are loads of good cards to be able to use this with as well. So yeah, Yuffie, S, 2 wind, Dull, with Leafkin, nice and simple, and the fact she has haste as well comes in, just immediately go ham. Cecil! I know everyone's been talking about the newer Cecils, but I'm going to go old school and talk about the one from Opus 5. So yeah, you can Leafkin to bring in Cecil, and then immediately get a Cecil back from your break zone as well to your hand. Could be the new one if you really wanted. But yeah, Cecil comes onto the field, and what I like about this is his entry effect doesn't have a restriction. So Cecil enters the field, choose one dull for opponent controls. If its cost is equal to or less than the damage you have received, break it. So yes, it is a restriction that it has to be a dull forward. However, if it's a 4 CP forward, you only have 3 damage, you can still choose it. You can then obviously on the stack use your S ability, which you retrieved with Ignis's effect, and then deal yourself another point of damage, break another forward, which is 4 CP or less, and then also break the first one upon the entry. So yeah, nice way to be able to kill some things. Also, good way to be able to deal yourself some damage or self damage, because that is a useful effect in some cards, which I'll again show you later. Ildnash, this is so much fun. I've always thought about good ways to be able to utilize Ildnash, and it didn't occur to me recently how fun Ildnash's Paradise can be if you utilize something with Warp, especially alongside Estinian. So yeah, the play here is you have Ignis on the field, you use Leafkin to then go and search yourself an Ildnash, play it onto the field, whilst also retrieving an Ildnash to your hand. You can then Warp Estinian. You know, that's literally one lightning in either wind or earth. That's easy enough to do. You then Ildnash S, pass turn, you immediately start your second turn, Estinian comes onto the field, you now have an Estinian that can attack twice, which will be huge, as well as Ignis and Ildnash. Now obviously this is if everything goes correctly, but normally when these sorts of things happen, it's like a case of, oh well, you know, the planets have to align, but actually here, all you need to have is Ignis on the field and be at damage 3 to be able to use Leafkin. I mean, yeah, you'd also need Estinian as well, but, you know, you either need Estinian you either need Estinian in your hand or an Ildnash in your hand, get Estinian back from the break zone using Ignis. You know, there's different ways to be able to do it, but still not that hard, and a lot of fun if you ask me. Obviously, Vayne worked quite nicely with Ildnash as well, being able to give you that additional turn. So let's say, hypothetically, you do Leafkin into Ildnash, then immediately use the S ability, and then you warp something at Warp 3. You play Vayne onto the field as well, take that warp counter off, draw a card. Next turn, which starts immediately, provided Vayne and, you know, everything's still there. Vayne then knocks a counter off of that warped forward, and it also takes one off itself, so you get a card off of that, and then the warped forward can then enter, because it warped 3, but you've only passed 2 turns, and Vayne's there, so he just takes one off for you. And yeah, you just have another forward on the field, which is, again, quite fun. You just have to make sure that you win that turn, which is why Estinian is such a fun card to play as with. Shinryu, why did I say it like that? Sorry. If you can play Shinryu onto the field, and obviously Shinryu can actually search you literally any card if you wanted to. But more importantly, you can also get a card from your break zone, which is nice because if you want to use Tidal Wave, so Shinryu's S ability, because it is relatively expensive. Now, Shinryu will probably be searching the actual S payment, but you get a card back from your break zone, which can then work towards paying the cost of Shinryu's S to break all the forward dependent controls. So yeah, you just have to be mindful of that, but, you know, ultimately, that's only 4 additional CP you need. Could be your backups, it could be 2 more cards on hand, whatever. Either way, it's a fun little bit. Right, now on to the old school Devout, which I mentioned earlier. I'll put him in the break zone, choose a forward or 4 less in your break zone, play him onto the field. There is the Earth White Mage that also does something similar, but only hits Earth forwards, whereas this guy can hit anything, so I thought it was a bit more versatile, so I just include this one instead. Daisy. Yeah, play Daisy back onto the field, also gets Daisy back from your break zone using Ignis, so you immediately have an S ability ready to go, and she becomes very, very hard to kill through damage. More Leonis, so he enters the field, immediately gets off an S. He's kind of hard to kill because he's got that good S or that good pay 0 ability, which then means that, you know, you'll have him there ready for the following turn with the S ready to go. Obviously, you can only use S when he is attacking, so you have to bear that in mind. Reno. So yeah, obviously you can Devout, bring Reno onto the field to then get a Reno back to your hand. Again through Ignis, pay Ice to give him haste, attack, bring in Rude. Bright Spark, Dull 2 things out of the way, Reno enters, Rude enters, maybe you've got Rude S to then kill one of the Dull forwards, I don't know. But yeah, a nice way to be able to go pretty aggressive in Ice, which normally doesn't have too much of that kind of hasty aggressiveness, so yeah, nice. Rain, talking of haste, so yeah, you play Rain onto the field to then get yourself another S from, or another Rain from the break zone to immediately give all your forwards haste. Gnarly. I mean, that could work alongside the Reno and Rude and things, so, you know, maybe play them onto the field through some other effect, or just play Reno onto the field to then play Rude onto the field to then break Devout to bring in Rain to get a Rain to then give everything haste, and yeah, just go absolutely ham with all your forwards. Finally, Sephiroth. So yeah, obviously he's got a fair bit of restriction because he has to be, or one, either you or your opponent have to be at damage 4 to be able to actually even play him onto the field, so no cheating him in unless someone's at damage 4, but you do get to choose a character and just break him. But then, obviously the point here is that Iggy gets you another Sephi from your break zone, you're in ice, which is what most of the Sephis are, so get yourself a Sephi back to hand, because you know you could be a little bit misdirection here, so maybe you've got a couple of these 7-cost Sephis in the break zone and you get one of those back to hand, but you play this one onto the field and you break something, and then if both of you, your opponent and yourself, are at 5 damage, you can then Octaslash and remove a forward, backup and monster. So yeah, break one character and then remove the other 3, which is pretty gruesome. And that is it, folks. That is Ignis. I really like the new Ignis card. There are loads of different ways you can utilize this effect throughout. I'm not going to go through every card with S abilities that you can cheat onto the field, not every other way of cheating things, but yeah, basically, if you are utilizing him with backups that can break and do cool things at the same time, like the the Star Civil play is just so much fun. I've only done it a couple of times, but it is fun nonetheless. And Rampair as well, just allows you to ram. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Stay safe, be lucky, and I'll see you in the next video.